Hi, my name is Tyrone, and welcome to the History Channel. The Neoclassical period included the Restoration Age, the Augustan Age, and the Colonial Age. Today, we are going to focus on the Augustan Age, also known as the Age of Pope or the Age of Satire. This period was between the 1700s and 1745. During this time, libraries spread so the public became more knowledgeable, and coffee shops were the place to be. Let's start with the authors.
Born in 1660, Daniel Defoe was the son of James Foe, a London butcher. Daniel had changed his name from Foe to Defoe to sound more gentlemanly. Along with a man named Samuel Richardson, Defoe is considered the founder of the English novel. Before, stories had usually been written as long poems or dramas. Defoe was into politics and worked as a journalist supporting King William III. Defoe was repeatedly imprisoned by his political opponents in 1713. Around the age of 59, Defoe published Robinson Crusoe in 1719. The name came from a carving he had seen in a stone while hiding as a fugitive. Robinson Crusoe is about a young voyager and his adventures while out at sea. Defoe had problems finding a publisher for the book because it was written in first person. This was unheard of during this time period. Born in 1688, Alexander Pope was known as one of the finest poets and satirists of the Augustan Age. Due to lack of formal schooling, Pope educated himself through extensive studying and reading, especially poetry. Later in his childhood, he became ill, which caused him to never grow taller than 4 feet 6 inches. He was required to wear a stiff canvas brace for the curve in his spine. Because he was ridiculed so much for his physical appearance, it gave an edge to his satire, but he was always kind and warm-hearted to his friends. His poem, The Rape of the Lock, is what made him famous. It was a long, humorous poem about the attempt of a young man to get a lock of hair from his beloved's head. Pope is also known for translating Homer's Iliad. He did this because he needed money, and it ended in a financial success. From 1725 to 1726, Pope and 2 other men translated the Odyssey, and even though the other men did about half, Pope got the most from the profits. Later on, Pope and Jonathan Swift became friends and published 3 volumes of poetry. He is known for the satire used in his works, and when him and Swift died, the Augustan Age came to an end. Born in 1667, Jonathan Swift was an Irish author and satirist. Swift had worked as a secretary for Sir William Temple until he passed away. Later, Swift was appointed as Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Even after his appointment as Dean of St. Patrick's, Swift wrote satirically in various genres, including both prose and poetry, using various forms to address different causes, including personal, behavioral, philosophical, political, religious, civic, and others. Later on, Swift published A Tale of a Tub, which defended the middle position of the Anglican and Lutheran churches. He also wrote A Modest Proposal, which was a reaction to English commercial practices that negatively impacted Ireland. He argues that the only items of commerce that the English don't restrict are Irish babies, and reasons that the Irish would be better off as cattle to be butchered than as a colony to be starved by the English. Swift had written the Drapier's Letters in response to the continued subjugation of all aspects of the lives of those living in Ireland by England. The English offered a reward of 300 euros for the name of the author, but rather than betraying him, the Irish made him a national hero. Swift's most recognized novel is Gulliver's Travels.
Libraries were starting to grow to a point that the literacy was much higher than the school enrollment. The reason that it was so high was because churches emphasized the need for every Christian to read the Bible, and libraries were also a way for people to satisfy their desires for books without buying them. One of the most famous books to read was Gulliver's Travels.
Lemuel Gulliver was just a normal Englishman. He started out studying at Cambridge, but his family was too poor to keep him there. He was sent to another school and later became a surgeon. After working as a doctor, his business failed when his patron died. He then decided to go out to sea and travel for 6 years. He planned on staying home when he got back, but then decided to accept one last job on a ship called the Antelope. While on the Antelope, they encounter a violent storm. 12 of the crewmen die, and 6, including Gulliver, board a small rowboat to escape. The boat capsizes, and Gulliver loses track of his companions. He swims safely to shore, and his companions are never seen again. Once at shore, he decides to lie down in the grass and rest. He wakes up being tied down by thread with tiny 6-inch people all around him. These tiny people are called Lilliputians. Gulliver doesn't act shocked at all, and while he is the normal one here, the Lilliputians think they are, and that Gulliver is the strange one.
Could Gulliver be a Lilliputian to some other nation's Englishman?
After showing his kindness, Gulliver is given plenty of food and clothing, but remains tied up. Day by day, he is asked to be freed, but is told no. By listening, Gulliver earns their trust. After seeing how useful he would be, Gulliver is asked to help in times of war, survey surrounding lands, help with construction, and deliver urgent messages. He agrees and is freed.
The Lilliputians' view is the funny part. Even with Gulliver, they never realize their own insignificance. They completely believe that they have control over Gulliver, when he could actually destroy them. Swift satirizes humanity's claim to power and significance in this way.
Later, there is a war between Blefuscu and Lilliput, which all started because they cracked their eggs differently. After a while, Gulliver gets charged with several things and is told he will be blinded and starved to death. With help from the Emperor Blefuscu, they repair a normal-sized boat and he makes it back to England. 2 months later, Gulliver sets sail on a ship called the Adventure to Cape of Good Hope in Madagascar. Their ship gets off course and Gulliver ends up in Brobdingnag. After wandering around, he tries to make it back to the boat, but they leave without him. He ends up running into giants called Brobdingnagians, who at first take care of him, but after finding out they can make a good profit from his tricks, he is only used for entertainment.
Notice how Gulliver's part is now complete opposite from where it was in part 1. However, the experiences in part 2 are not as positive. Swift used the Brobdingnagians to show how Europeans would do anything if they get money out of it.
He is eventually sold to the Queen, and while conversing with the King, he tells him about the significance of England. The King replies, "I cannot but conclude the bulk of your natives to be the most pernicious race of little odious vermin that nature ever suffered to crawl upon the surface of the earth." From this, Gulliver realizes that all the giants seem to be narrow-minded, ignorant, and poorly educated. Gulliver escapes by having his cage picked up by an eagle and dropped at sea, only to be rescued by people his own size. 2 months after he gets back to England, Gulliver is asked to go on a voyage towards the East Indies. On the way, his ship is attacked by pirates. He tries to reason with one of them, knowing they are both Christian, but is surprised that the Japanese pirate was kinder. After commenting on this, the Christian was angry and put Gulliver on a small boat with only enough food for 4 days. Gulliver ends up in a floating island called Laputa. The people on this island all have tilted heads with eyes facing upwards. He feels neglected because the Laputans are only interested in math and music and are much smarter. Pointless experiments were done, such as extracting sunbeams from cucumbers, designing a way to build a house from the roof down, and curing patients by blowing air through them. He later arrives in Japan and gets on a Dutch ship back to England.
By people talking about the pointless experiments, Swift is getting at people using time and resources for things with no reason or purpose.
Gulliver stays for 5 months before leaving his pregnant wife to travel again. This time, he is the captain of a ship. After his crew members die, he picks them up along the way who were a bad influence, and they all became pirates. Gulliver is left on an unknown shore where he runs into magical horses and human British-like creatures called Houyhnhnms and Yahoos. He develops a love for the Houyhnhnms and no longer wishes to go back to mankind. Others take offense to Gulliver staying with them and is forced to leave. When he gets back to England, he can no longer stand his wife and children because he compares them to the Yahoos. Gulliver ends up buying 2 horses and spends 4 hours a day talking to them.
By Gulliver not wanting to go back to mankind, it is explained how humans like simplicity and nature. Part 4 shows a satire skewering both human civilization and those who would look to animals for a model on how to live. Coffee shops were these great new ideas where people could come together and exchange news, opinions, and ideas. They were very important for this era because people were coming up with these new ideas, but then coffee shops started to disappear and the ideas started to fade with them. Queen Anne had a hard time and a lot of challenges being queen. She was never anticipated to take the throne because she only had a limited education. Her sister and brother-in-law died and she became queen in 1702 and faced two major events in English history: the Act of Union that united England and Scotland, and the second being the International War. Queen Anne had 17 children, and out of all of them, only one lived to be 12 years old. She died on 1714 with nobody to take her reign. King George I took the throne after Queen Anne, but he didn't accomplish anything, so after his reign, King George II, his son, he had a hatred for his father because he locked his mother away till her death. Once his father died, he took the throne and started to change all of his father's policies. Because he disagreed with them, he led his troops into the Battle of Dettingen in 1743 and was the last emperor to lead his men into battle.
The major concepts to know about the Augustan movement are satire and prose. Satire is the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics or in other topical issues. An example of this would be in Gulliver's Travels when he runs into the Lilliputians. The satire in the story is making fun of how significant and powerful we think we are. Satire is still used today, like in the Today Show or the Weekend Update from Saturday Night Live. Prose is written or spoken language in its ordinary form without metrical structure. Authors during this time spoke like this because it helped readers to better understand the stories. An example of prose today would be Call Me Ishmael from Moby Dick, or My Mom Always Said Life Was Like a Box of Chocolates, You Never Know What You're Gonna Get from Forrest Gump.
The Augustan movement ended once Pope and Swift died, and it has impacted how we do things today. Thank you for watching today's episode. Join us next week at 6. This is Tyrone, signing off.